Hey guys, thought I'd shake things up a bit today and talk about a gun that isn't a handgun. Pulled out an old, rare, kind of weird semi-auto shotgun from the early 1900s. And what you're looking at right here is a Sjögren 12-gauge semi-auto. And you might be scratching your head a bit when you hear me say that, Sjögren. If you look at the title of this video, you'll see the name is spelled S-J-O-G-R-E-N. That's because it's named after the Swedish inventor, the guy who designed it. His name was Carl Sjögren. And in Swedish, that's how it's pronounced. But there's apparently also an autoimmune disorder called Sjögren syndrome, which is spelled the same way, but in English it's pronounced differently. But so these things are so rare, I just pronounce it by the Swedish way, Sjögren. Anyway, it was designed by a Swedish guy, but it was actually produced in Denmark in the years 1908, 1909. There were 5,000 of these made over the span of those 2 years, so they're pretty rare. I don't think there are many over in that were imported to the United States to begin with. But what makes it really interesting to me is that now there's not a lot of information about these out there, but some people say this was actually the first semi-auto shotgun available on the market. If you know your shotgun history, you might be aware that John Browning designed what's usually considered to be the first semi-auto shotgun, the Auto 5 model. And as far as I can tell, I haven't really been able to pin this down, but some people say that this gun was actually the first to the market, that John Browning's design was the first patented, but this one actually beat him to the market. As far as I can tell, I think John Browning still beat Sjögren to the market with the semi-auto shotgun, but in any event, even if this is the second place runner-up, what makes it cool is that it's the first inertia recoil system on a semi-auto shotgun, as opposed to John Browning's long recoil system. The inertia recoil system was later resurrected by Benelli, and it's been pretty popular in their M series, the M1, M3, M4, all their modern make shotguns, I think, are inertia recoil driven, which I'll get into a little bit how that works, but for right now I'll just talk a little bit. I'll give you a quick overview of the gun, and I'm not really used to doing long gun reviews. I typically focus on handguns, so in order to point this stuff out, I'm used to working up close and personal. I pulled out my laser pointer here, so point out a few of the features of this thing. Start at the back here. The butt plates back here were replaceable. It's hard plastic right now. Apparently there were different sizes available. You could change the length of pull, which is 14.5 inches currently. It has a couple sling mounts. I believe this gun was intended mostly for hunters. I don't think there were ever any like military contracts on it or anything like that. So probably a sling. It might be kind of cool to pick one of those up someday. An old period correct Danish sling to strap on there, just as an added little bonus. Here's where it looks kind of interesting. I'll explain why a little bit later, but this is where the inertia recoil system comes into play. This right here is basically a slide, and this is the rail of the slide, and it slides backwards, and the cartridge is ejected, the spent casing, or the spent shell, and so yeah, I'll show you all that in a little bit. I'm just kind of giving you an overview here. Safety's right there. You got a 27.5-inch barrel. There's also a shorter barrel available that was 24 inches, but I think those are pretty hard to find. Magazine is right in here. It holds 4 rounds plus 1 in the chamber, so that's where the semi-auto comes from. It feeds out of there. The bead front sight. It's a cylinder bore. There's no choke in there, at least as far as I can tell. And yeah, so that's sort of an overview. The gun is blued steel and walnut, as you can probably tell. So that's sort of just a basic overview of the gun. And let's do some close-ups now and talk a little bit more about the inertia-driven recoil system. So now we're taking an up-close look at the Sjögren. I'm going to show you a little bit of a few of the ergonomic features, some of the controls on it, and explain a little bit more about the inertia recoil system that Carl Sjögren came up with for this gun. First, I'll just show you a couple of the controls. It's not too exciting, but just for a thorough review. It's got a safety right back here, which goes back, and you can see the S, that means safe. And now it's ready to fire. And then really there's nothing else going on all the way up there. This is where everything's happening that's interesting, I think. So I'll kind of let you just look at it for a second and soak up the weirdness there. You can see that's all in Danish, just kind of telling you that it was made in Copenhagen. So what you're looking at here, it's a striker fired shotgun. This is the firing pin here in the striker. This is what flies forward and hits the primer on the shell. And I didn't mention before, but this only takes the older 2.5-inch shells. It doesn't take the more modern 2.25 or 3-inch loads. So, which is kind of a pain. And I'll get into that in the criticism section a little bit. But what makes this cool is watch. This is you probably notice it looks a little odd. That's because this functions as a slide, and it comes back. It's got last round hold open, and it locks open like that. And that's how it chambers the next round. That flies backwards, strips around which would be found right here, and I'll show you how to load it in a second. And so that's what's kind of cool about this gun. And then to make the slide fly forward, once you're done loading it, you push this button here. There's a button underneath. It's not really a button, but you know what I mean. So now it would be ready to go. I'll show you the actual loading procedure is. Let me dry fire it real fast. What you do after it's been fired, in order to pull this back and to load it again, you have to spin this knob. Make sure this is in focus. And what this does is draws the firing pin out, and that lets you bring the slide back. And I think that's part of the inertia system also, is that during firing this has to come out, and then this is unlocked. Basically the slide is unlocked and it's allowed to be driven backwards. So once you've got this back, what you do is you put a shell right in here, and then you push down here to send that home, and it drives the shell into the barrel or into the chamber. Let's see. So now you got a shell in there, and then you can slip 4 more into the magazine through this hole here. And let me see if I can get that in better focus at all. There we go. So from here you just load your shells like you normally would in a semi-auto shotgun. You can put 4 of them in there, and then you're ready to go. And the gun is cocked since you already pulled it back, and it's ready to go unless you put safe on it. But so that's the loading procedure of it, and that's sort of quick overview of how some of those controls work. And I mentioned earlier that you're able to there's a shorter barrel length available too, and you can actually switch out the barrels, and I'll just real quickly show you how that's done. Up here is a little button that's right here. It's at the front of the magazine, and if you push this in, give this a turn, and then pull it out, what you can do down here now, make sure this is staying in focus, is if you're pulling this magazine tube out, you turn this, then the barrel comes off, and now the gun is much smaller. And this is another thing, I don't know if this is for hunting purposes so you can carry it out in the field easier or what, but so now you've got the 27.5-inch barrel off, and you can put on the 24-inch barrel if you have one, which would be cool to find, but I'm sure that won't ever happen. These things are rare enough as is. So and then to put it back on, it's got an interrupted thread system, which you can see kind of right there how it's threaded halfway. So you put it in and then turn it, and then it locks the threads in. So I'll put that back together and I'll get into shooting impressions. So shooting the gun is kind of fun for a couple reasons. One, it's just kind of a fun gun to shoot. It shoots the lighter loaded 2.5-inch shells, and the recoil is pretty soft using this inertia system. But it's also fun because it's a little bit scary, and you can probably imagine why if you think about it. This slide is coming, imagine you're holding the gun, your face is sort of right here. Every time you fire, this slide is coming right back at your eyeball. And it's a little scary. It's probably one of my criticisms of the gun, but I'm sure it's safe. There's a piece of metal here that's intended to stop it, and it's not flying back that fast, but your face is just right here, and it's a little bit, I don't know, nerve-wracking sort of when you're firing it for the first few times. But and I haven't shot it a whole lot, but I put enough rounds through it, and it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. The gun's in good shape, so I don't think it's going to actually break on me, but if something were to happen, it could be pretty disastrous. Anyway, so that's sort of the shooting experience. I'll show you the trigger a little bit too. Trigger is not that great. I think it's cocked already, so you can just watch the pull a little bit. It's kind of heavy. It's not super crisp either. So and then I'll cock that again. Don't want to dry fire this too much, because in these old guns, you never know if something will break. So again, you can just see how long the pull is, sort of. And it's kind of heavy. It just sort of feels, I don't know, clunky in a way. So it's definitely not the best trigger I've ever felt, but overall, shooting the gun is kind of fun. It's not something that I shoot a lot just because of its oldness, its rarity. If something breaks, there's nothing I can do about it, basically. But shooting's fun. It's been accurate too, so nothing to complain about there. I will get into criticisms next, though. And I've kind of already addressed most of my criticisms, really. The major one being this thing flying back at your face is a little bit intimidating. Apart from that, another criticism I have is just the angle of the stock here. It's sort of an older design, and I kind of prefer to have a little bit more of this swoop down here, this sort of pistol grippy looking stock. It's just not as comfortable in my arms, at least. Another criticism is probably going to be the shot shell situation. The 2.5-inch shells, you can't just walk into any gun shop and find those, so that's kind of a pain to find ammo for this thing. And you know, you can't just get 3-inch shells or 2 and 3/4 inch shells and put them in there. They just won't work. So really, those are my main criticisms. The biggest one, I think, being the slide flying back at your face, just being a little bit scary at first. So in conclusion, I would consider the Sjögren to be an interesting piece of history in shotgun design. It's if it wasn't the first semi-auto shotgun, it was at the very least the first one with this strange Inertia recoil system, which Benelli later perfected. I like the looks of it. You know, it's kind of an ugly duckling at first, but it's sort of grown on me, having that weird looking slide over there and everything. I wouldn't consider it to be an everyday shooter at all, just because they're extremely rare. If something breaks, it's probably impossible to find a part unless you machine it yourself. But you know, overall, I think it's just a cool kind of conversation piece, and you know, I'm definitely into the weird, rare, obscure, that sort of stuff. So as far as shotguns go, this definitely fits the bill for me. As far as finding one for yourself, these Sjögrens, you know, they were, like I said, there were 5,000 of them made over 100 years ago and in Scandinavia. So they're pretty tough to find. I don't think a lot of them were actually imported to the United States, but every once in a while you'll see one somewhere. I've seen a couple on Gunbroker in the past, I don't know, year or so, and prices are sort of all over the place too. You go to some of the bigger old gun dealers like Simpson Limited and Collector Firearms and stuff, and I've seen a couple there every once in a while. Prices range $500, $1,500. There's just so few of these, it's really impossible to establish a market value. So, you know, just go based on condition and what you feel like it's worth to you. But if you're looking for something interesting, a unique addition to your long arm collection, which I'm always on the lookout for, I think the Sjögren 12 gauge here, it makes a pretty good addition to that sort of collection. And be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, because I will be making a bunch more shooting videos in a month or two probably, and this is definitely going to be one that I'll bring out and shoot on camera, so you can kind of see how that inertia recoil system works, how that slide back there works. So it's fun to shoot. I like shooting it. I like having it. It's cool looking, conversation piece, all that. So keep an eye out for them. It's a Sjögren shotgun. Thanks for watching.